So let's move on to the next speaker, Jorge Bermúdez. He is the second speaker in 2014 Rooted Lab. He is a prosecutor, and he was the very first in using the term exploit. His presentation last year was a success, and this year will be great. Jorge is a Bachelor of Arts in degree. He started the degree in 2006. He was destined to Guipúzcoa Prosecutor Head Office, and now he is a specialist in the European certificate. He knows a lot about computer science. He's been working for the European Council as well, and he's been collaborating with the University Institute of Police Science from Alcalá de Henares. He's been working in Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Bolivia, in Abu Dhabi Law Institute as well, and other important institutions all over the world. He's been giving so many papers, especially in Rooted.com. Oh, are you familiar with this? Yes. Is this sound properly? Okay.
Well, last year I tried to make my talk as entertaining as possible. However, this year will be serious. No, I'm just joking, okay? So my name is Jorge Bermúdez. You may remember me from previous talks, okay, especially the one that I talked about Venus and Mars and hackers coming from Mars and Venus, judges coming from Venus. So this year in the call for papers, I said, well, I believe that there is nothing new to tell them. I don't really want to bother the organizers telling them that I want to be there. But then I got an email from Roman, and he said, well, you've been voted as the second most interesting talk last year. So that is to say, I got the second prize, and because the second prize is in the ladies' toilet, okay, this is a chauvinist statement, that therefore I disagree with that, and especially now that there is a conference about public prosecutors in favor of inequalities, okay, so, or to fight against inequalities. So therefore, let me tell you that I cannot be even more happier to be here. Ever since I was here, well, many things happened in my profession that didn't work out well. Some of the cases did not came out well. And, well, coming here and sharing with you what I want to share with you, to explain to you what I will be explaining to you, is a great satisfaction. Parallel to Roman's email, draft law has been passed. It has been like just a prize, like a gift for we legislators and for public prosecutors. That has meant a dramatic change. Because it is true to say that ever since I've been fighting against cybercrime, I've been all the time asking and asking for things and crying. I talk to people in the high courts, also in a specialized fora with police, specialized in organized crime, also in conference and fora with lawyers. I used to tell the same thing to all of them, and I say, our procedure art is very, very old. It is like trying to chase an F1 car if you're riding a chariot. I went everywhere. I talked with everyone. I even talked to politicians to try as much as possible to promote reform of the legislation. I went to TV. I talked to these famous journalists in these famous shows, and I told them, I said over there, but I'm telling you right now, that our legal system was outdated, was lacking many, many tools, and we were doing our best with the tools available to us. But one of the surprises that I found last May, it was that one of the public prosecutors gave a very interesting talk about the European Court on Human Rights. So that is an international court that supervises that the sentences are in agreement with the Charter of Human Rights. And one of the basic human rights is the right to be to be taken to court and then to have legal assistance. And this is based on primarily on clear laws and laws that are produced and published before the fact is committed. This is what the European Human Court says about the Parrot case, okay? Therefore, when we talk about terrorism, this public prosecutor told us about a really frightening case. We are talking about a ring by the Mihov ring in Germany, and it had been dismantled, virtually dismantled, and the two leaders, they were a man and a woman, they committed suicide together in two different prisons. I always found that very, very strange. But then there was an element, an activist in that group that had not been identified, and he was kind of trying to build the gang again. So the German police started to stop that, or tried to stop that, to stop kidnapping, bombing, etc. And when they had evidence that this man was meeting with an accomplice, okay, he was put a GPS locator on his car, and they found so much information. They found weapons storage, the training camps that they were using in the forest, and finally an address, a domicile. He was arrested, he was taken to court, and he was given sentence. However, the lawyer appealed to the highest courts, and then when he was not given the reason, he went to the European Human Rights Court. He said that the right of his client had been underestimated and had been jeopardized. And then the European Human Court used the German law that had been reformed short ago, and including the use of high technology research tools. So the European Court decided that it was a quality standard allowing all citizens to know what the state could do or couldn't do. Therefore, let us move on to the Spanish case now. So we were talking about the image on top. So our law was from 1882. I said that so many times. You know, well, very, very outdated. Therefore, imagine that if the Germans had had that problem, imagine what could happen to us. We had a first pack of, service pack for our law, for our procedure acts. The first one said that, well, the postal communication could be intervened whenever there was an authorization or a warrant. That is to say, to keep the ones that are related to the cause, etc. Can you imagine a magistrate, you know, putting a stamp on a computer screen? That's ridiculous. So, well, at the time of Franco's dictatorship, that was not a problem. Actually, I went to Abu Dhabi and I went there to give a talk about, well, procedure acts here, about constitutional guarantees, you know, going into domiciles, and then those people, you know, they had a democratic monarchy, were looking at me so strange, and I said, what is he talking about? They said, well, here the only thing that we need is just to find out where this man is, and then just go after him and arrest him. Well, at the time before the Spanish Constitution, that was not a problem, but then when the Spanish Constitution was approved, they said that, well, the houses could not be searched without any a warrant. It does not even consider the possibility to have authorization of the people engaged in the communication, but it also talks about the legal resolution. So between up until 1997 and 1988, the judges, the only thing that they could do to intervene or to tap a telephone was that statement. Communications cannot be violated unless there is a legal resolution for that. Okay, and I say, okay, let us set up a legal resolution. Let us set it out. Therefore, there was no quality standard whatsoever. Then a number of sentences in the European Human Court made us learn from that. The first one was Venezuela against Contreras, where it says that Spain has no legal body that allows to tap telephones or communication, even if there is a judicial warrant. And then, well, the legislature changed the law and added a paragraph and I said, but also telephone communications could be intervened as long as there is a warrant. And that's as much as they did. And then we have been working, we have been using that standard up until nowadays. That was service pack number 1. So that was the only thing that was available to us to intervene communications. It was not enough at all. And what happened? Well, some judges have been working with organized crimes rings. They arrested people who was carrying a huge amount of drugs, and they did that many times through intervening their communications. So when they were sentenced here in Spain, they used to appeal to the European courts. So there is one man, Sito Niñanco, I'm sure you heard of him. He was the boss of the bosses of all the Galician narco dealers. So this man went to the European courts, and then the ruling said that Spain has no legislation to intervene communication. But then the High Court and the Constitutional Court, based on the Venezuela against Contreras ruling, they have kind of included different needs or different measures and things that should be done to make the case substantial. So they had to say there should be prior evidence, the measure should be proportionate, should be necessary, only, well, it can be used whenever information cannot be obtained otherwise, etc. However, we did that after this man was sentenced. So, a sentence against Spain. And then, well, that didn't help us to wake up. And then in the year 2006, in the Covenant ruling, then the European Court gave up on us. And then they said, well, now they have a constitutional doctrine, which has been there for many years. Legislation is insufficient, but the doctrine of the Constitutional Court is enough. They didn't recognize it as such, okay, but as if we read between the lines, and that was our understanding. Well, considering telephone calls, considering the situation nowadays, we are talking about all type of communication, visiting websites, file transfer, instant messaging, WhatsApp, Facebook, IM, Twitter, IM implementing online gaming, they have their own IM system. So we have a wide range of forms of communication that are not contemplated in the law. So therefore, what happens with telephone calls? This is not good for telephone calls either. So this is not good enough. So therefore, we needed a reform. The High Court mentioned that in one of the rulings that need to be changed. Therefore, we got service pack this very same year. At the end of December last year, the draft bill was published for the Procedure Act, and this is Service Pack 2, and well, that's the one that I would like to introduce you to today. It is not that I did it myself, but I made my contribution. It was not only me, it was a group of people, a group of public prosecutors working on organized crime and cybercrime, judges, law enforcement forces. Through their specialized units, they have been raising awareness in that regard. It was not me who said, okay, you have to change the law, and they say, oh, yeah, we'll do what you do. No, that's not the way it is, you know. I've been humble, and I made my humble contribution to that. And I'm very happy that Service Pack is helping us to move forward. So this Criminal Procedure Act does the following. Well, there are a number of articles talking about intervention of postal and telegraphic communications. Well, have you seen the telegram? Do you know how to do that? Well, I've never sent a telegram myself. Anyway, so this article finishes in Article 588, and then 589 article talks about a completely different thing. And what shall we do now? Well, for some people, this is not a challenge. Well, we started to use these quarter articles like if we were back in the 50s or in the 60s, and also kinky and sexy articles. Then, based on these articles, kinkies and sexies, every time I say it, I find it interesting, okay? This kind of a mini code to do technological research, which is embedded within articles 588 and 589. If you click on that, then it is deployed. And then these general dispositions or provisions start to consider, okay, what are we going to do? First of all, a limitation was eliminated. That is to say, administration through hardware networks. That is to say, telephone or physical telephone lines. Now, they said that communication networks, either physical, logic, or virtual, can be investigated. So that means that we can intervene a telephone call, even a voice IP call. I'm not talking about that this will be applicable to all the citizens. If there are prior evidence that a legal resolution could be asked, substantiated, well-reasoned, explaining the evidence, the type of crime, whether that crime is included in the catalog for which these interventions are allowed. Then also stating why information cannot be obtained otherwise. Who will do that? What is the specific police unit that will do that? There is a list that have to be filled out by judges. That will require lots of training as well for judges, because judges so far have been working with this catalog. However, that catalog will soon be obsolete considering the new requirements, the changes of our Procedure Act. Later on, we will talk about a number of requirements and elements that would require technical training. For instance, measures to avoid the malicious leaks of the evidence, etc. Well, there are things that judges will have to explain in the rulings. Otherwise, if they do not include that, the rulings may be made null and void. So after that, we got a victory, and I say, at last, we got it. So our law 25-2007, I showed it to you last year. It is a transposition of a European law that establishes when telecommunication providers will give data to the authorities. And then, well, according to European legislation, they said in case of severe crimes. And then they said, okay, severe crimes are included in the penal code. Most of the crimes related to technology information, these sentences are below 5 years of age. So therefore, crimes could not be applied to these type of crimes. So some judges decided that based on the legislation that they have at hand, they could not authorize this provision of data. So we wanted to have the ID of the owner of a telephone line where the crime had been committed, and they said, no, you cannot do that, because that crime is sentenced, or it's punished with a sentence below 5 years of age in prison. Therefore, we, through an internal proceedings, we just developed a set of arguments against that. We said, okay, we really want to use the law. Well, sometimes we are giving the reason, sometimes we are not. Therefore, some crimes go unpunished, but the new law puts an end to that. That is to say, to severe crimes, also terrorism, crimes, organized crime, or whenever crimes are committed using ITs or ICTs. Well, because unless you find the person at the cyber coffee using his computer whenever the crime is being committed. It is also said that in these general provisions that gathering traffic data is allowed. So we really need to know which is the line of communication that we want to intervene. And for that, we need to have traffic data to say, well, this is the IP that we want to intervene. Well, IP is not the perfect solution, of course not. Well, they told us that IP is a personal piece of information that we can identify a person. No, well, we are at the hotel, there is a Wi-Fi, and then, well, there is who knows who have logged on, who has connected to the network. Is this IP identifying an individual? No, that IP identifies a wide number of individuals. So IP is a dissociated data. It requires more information than that to know who is the identity of the person behind the machine. And also the general provisions establish a duty of collaboration. Telecommunication providers are obliged to collaborate with the legal powers, with the public administration, and to provide them with the necessary data. Well, but if they disobey and they go unpunished, no. Okay, we should establish that clear obligation. And if they do not collaborate, they should be punished. And I don't know if legislators know how far they can go. Well, because it says that there is a specialist in ICTs who is aware of all the information required to get that information, he is also obliged to collaborate, and he may be required to collaborate. So we are talking about judicialized hacking. God save us all. Precisely that. However, because it's just left in the air, so that requires regulation, because that duty of collaboration should not become in something like that. You know, that you are going to do that because I'm telling you to do so. Well, okay, well, although some people may like to be that one, okay, no, but it's not a question of using all the martial arts that you know, okay, to make someone collaborate with you. So some systems should be arbitrated so that this collaboration is just ordinary collaboration, not legal slavery. Experts have a duty or receive remuneration for the work. Okay, so these hackers that are asked to work by the state, okay, to help the state in specific cases because of an urgency reason, well, they might be in a position to say how much they want to collaborate, and if they collaborate, they should be remunerated for that. So this is just a hypothesis, and I love it. I love it because, well, some of my colleagues know much more than me about cases, doctrine, etc. When it comes to thinking about, well, crazy hypotheses, I'm the best at that. And then, well, we talked about traffic data and related data. Well, we are not talking about IP only. This could be a bit frightening. We are talking about, when we talk about associated data, we are talking about things much more important than the IP address. IP address is not the mantra. We get at the end of a line of communication, and then we found a router. And actually, an expert in security says that I just want to have my router open. If someone commits a crime from my home, and then my router is has lots of security, my MAC address filters, well, if the police comes to my home, we will say it's you, you know, because, well, your router is highly secure and still someone has committed a crime. However, if it is fully open, okay, I have my defense and say, well, it was open, anyone can have logged on or have committed a crime, could have committed a crime from my Wi-Fi. So we really need to find out and look at type of investigations that we want to do whenever we get, well, to that point. So there is a person from the crime unit, the in the police in the north of Spain. He says that whenever the digital research finishes, then the traditional research or investigation starts. Therefore, these digital investigations, well, have a limit, okay? And then, well, when you reach that point, you cannot go any further. And then we have the know-how of police, okay? This is a traditional investigation. However, there are also investigation tools that can help us in our job. When we are talking about traffic data and associated, well, I don't know whether legislations knew how far they could go with that. They talk about using intelligence, criminal intelligence data, crossing data, intelligence searches. Do they know that we can be talking about passive correlation attacks? One of the methods that other countries are using, when they try to identify someone who is acting behind mTOR. So this is crossing data, but not about a specific person. So the law says specific tax, specific investigation, but then they said that you can cross data and you can enlarge your search to find a person. So that means that you can, well, increase your search to find a person. But these massive correlation attacks, I'm not an expert. However, from what I read, there is the possibility of analyzing lots of communications that have been made through mTOR, Novator, to find out where that communication comes from. That is to say, what is the connection point, okay, where this person logged on. So intelligent search and crossing data. Are we talking about big data? Careful, careful. You cannot use it freely or easily. Whenever someone says big data, what it means, okay, that we all have to have a drink or what, okay, we cannot take it that easily. So identification of users, terminals, and devices. This is what I was telling you about, okay? IPs are not enough. We also use other data, email data. We have ENG, the code that allows us to identify a subscribed line, okay, not only the terminal. Because, well, nowadays with the smartphones, yes, we have, well, drug dealers use the trick of changing their smartphone all the time. I remember a person who had a contact within the telecom provider, and he used to get like telephone cards. He used to change them every so often. So there is a device, EasyCatcher, that allows you, when you pass by a person, you need to record the conversation, just to gather information to find out that he was setting up a meth lab. So EasyCatcher allows you to identify the line, and then you can take that to the judge and say, well, we need a warrant to intervene to do this tap wiring because we know that this man is a drug dealer. EasyCatcher is already being used, but it is not protected by law. So judges are interpreting that Article 179(2). So they say that this is something logical. Well, if you know which line, well, before you intervene in line, you really want to know the device that is being used. So that magistrate, that person knew a lot about that question, and actually he took part in the drafting of the penal code, which was the replacement of the old Criminal Procedure Act, but for some reason did that not succeed. So I think there was a reason for that. The law requires such a dramatic reform of the public administration that, no, that was not possible. You know, many bodies had to be changed. Everything had to be changed. Well, even buildings. So the staff of the courts, you know, some people were not had to be made redundant. So it was such a big change. So therefore, that penal procedure act, the procedure code did not succeed. That's why we decided to go for the Service Pack 2. And as I say, the magistrate of the High Court that was leading the drafter, he introduced these IMEs, ISINs, etc., because he's got lots of knowledge about that. And then when he gave a talk, he talked about these devices such as Easy Catch that allow us to identify lines. Okay, environmental listening. So now it is allowed to use listening and recording devices, sound devices. Well, the legislator wants to use hidden microphone and hidden devices. But who wants to have a policeman, you know, going through, breaking into a house, okay, just to install a hidden microphone? Well, because as we had last year, I said, okay, we can use a device that everyone carries on them, which is, well, a smartphone. So you heard from what David said before, Snowden, research that other states have developed to intervene communications through a number of techniques that we thought it was not possible to use it. For instance, virus infection.
So our mobile phone is turned into a recording device. I have read that they can even adapt that depending on the position of the GPRs, the microphone is activated or not and transmit because the battery is working all the time, generating a volume of recording absolutely to be conveyed and transmitted, or at least they are suspect they program the GPRs for starting recording at this very specific point, and I'm transmitting at this specific point. This can be done. This is feasible right now. So you check out this article. They're talking about mechanisms of recording, not about malware or logical devices. Further on, in the 586 article, they talk about biologic devices. They talk about specific programs to do tracking on suspicious computer systems. The famous police Trojans. Oh, a new coinage. Oh, a new police Trojan. So let's go for drinks. We'll talk about the police Trojans later on. A Trojan can be used to turn a mobile phone into a recording device. Let's see it. Let's see it. It's a very interesting option. Within the environmental and recordings and listenings and wire times, they talk about the infiltrated agent. The infiltrated agent is a figure contemplated for decades since the reform of the Criminal Procedure Act transformation. They talk about some articles, B, second parts. In this article, they talk about that a cover agent can pretend his identity, and he can pretend who he's not with a fake passport and name, and he can pretend to be a criminal person, a crooked man. They talk about we have a criminal organization group which is identified, devoted to drug trafficking, but that we have no evidence. So we asked for a legal authorization for this agent to act. Infiltrated agents in organization, they can develop criminal delictive acts proportional to the nature of the crime we are persecuted. The cover agent can do exchange of drug substances in small quantities to identify and detain and arrest the members of a criminal organization at a great range, but the cover agent cannot kill that trafficker because this would be absolutely unproportioned for the ends. So this is used in the real world. And on the internet, what happens since 1994 with the New York Times drawing thing. Nobody knows that you are a dog on the internet. And Facebook came out and they tracked those identified persons with names and surnames. Until that moment, people were identified with aliases or the I am who I am. So I'm the agent 32345 Hits. This is my. This is not a nickname properly. It's like Frodo, CR7. Myself, I use aliases when I was a young boy, and even now I'm okay. I'm now writing Jorge Bermúdez prosecutor.com. On the internet world, they are using fake identities. This is a currency exchange thing and coins. Nobody is infringing the law with the name of Frodo from the Lord of the Rings. Why not? This was not intended and provision on the law. Now it's in the law for those infiltrated agents to track down these IT crimes. A cover agent can use a fake name to fight against the criminals. Back at that time, this could be done when fundamental constitutional rights were not infringed. So we are on a forum where everybody is listening to me. Here is a forum. It's a big forum. It's a public conversation that in forums, for example, pedophile forums are very close, where you can only access with a password and keyword and username. And within these pedophile forums, private conversations are in. So here, the pseudo infiltrated agent cannot access because they didn't have an authorization. Now, with the new reform law, a cover agent can access this pedophile fora without the just authorization. Now it's possible to access for this cover agent to send and receive illicit files. Some attorneys have said this is going to use for the links websites with junkies and drug addicts. It's not for that. My goodness, it's not for that. And we have reformed the law and change the law for another purpose. There are many other ways of investigating and look into this. There is not the pre-requirement of necessity. This is for a specific pedophile fora where you have to prove that you are a member of this. How can you prove it? You have to send fresh materials done by you or this unknown for others. And these police databases are a real fishing area to use files as a bait to catch and grab these pedophiles. Other places are doing it. Now we can do it because we have changed the law. We have changed the law. Now there's a technical regulation. We can analyze the algorithm associated to these files by law. What the mess? It's a bit on visual basis. I can track down the direction, the address, the IP. Okay, dokie. We're talking about the hash function of the file to be sent and to be comparable and compared with the files of the indicted person when this pedophile is arrested, to prove there was to be a communication related and mentioned by the cover agent. I sent a photo with this hash function to the pedophile. When the confiscated computer is analyzed, the pedophile cannot say, okay, it's not me. Who was it? It was me because I, as a police officer, cover agent, I sent you this file and you receive it. So this is at the large. This is very useful. There's much room for many other things. We talk about how can we hack the law. This also can be used. We can use illicit malware files which allow to call home. I'm here. This guy is using me. Security, active defense, the new terms in fashion in the computer science. So let's be ready for just in case when somebody tries to attack my system, when somebody tries to steal something from my house. Oh, there is a inner color. This guy has a boot connecting from an IP and is sending me an alert message. Somebody's trying to sabotage and boycott my call, my telephone. There was a while ago, there was a conference with the judges from the province of Córdoba, who is a real authority in wiretapping communications. He is a Supreme Court judges, and other very relevant judges who deal with very, very crooked criminals. And I told them, it's an accepted doctrine that I cannot record a conversation between two people, but I can to record if I'm a part of this communication. If you're and myself, we're talking, the two of us, I'm entitled to record this conversation because between you and me, and if I send it to the court, I can be committing a crime against intimacy. But this can be accepted as evidence before courts. Somebody is blaming for somebody. He is threatening me. So I record the conversation. I put it to the court, and I know how can I defend myself. Somebody's calling me. I can see the number on screen. I'm going to the police. The incoming number call has offered me to sell drug. Is illicit, is illegal to give this number to the police. It's me who has been called, so I can inform and report this issue to the police. A computer connected on the network. If somebody is connecting to my system, both of us, we are establishing a communication to my system. Involuntarily, against my will, this guy tried to get data from my communication in my system. He's trying to sneak in my computer system, and I can find out where this guy is connecting from to my system, and with the necessary data, I can get a legal just authorization to move forward and speed up to the judges. We're talking about bait-infected files that allow us to keep a conversation with the criminal. And here yourself, the competent community, if we connect the Criminal Procedure Act with the organic security law, which regulates the role of the guardians and security agents and the security and competent security departments from companies who can sometimes perform and conduct activities who are regularly done by the police agents. Somebody goes to the company to kill the board of directors, so the agents can arrest the suspicious person as if they were police officers, and they can also use weapons without the authorized permit from the judge. Somebody is attacking my information IT systems. This action should be done by the police, but now we are the people attacked. No police is around us to help us. So this possibility is feasible. This is a draft bill, so we're talking about a law which is not now in vigor, but if talking about a bill is risky if the connections between two laws we are not really published and in vigor is science fiction. But that's why we are here to advance future. We are going to advance new theories. Now, imaging, recording, and tracking down of people. This is a tough issue because the Criminal Procedure Act allows us to record images on the outskirts, in the exterior, because in the intimacy we cannot do, because somebody could be affected if he's recorded at home. For instance, a father with his children at home recorded with their daily activities, everyday activities with their children. This is not legal in the interior. So, okay, so the malware comes in place now. His computer system has a malicious code which activates his webcam. How can we know if this person is inside or outside? Let's put a hand behind, because we're talking about very valid investigating proceedings in Latin America, Colombia, if I remember well. Software activating the webcam from a computer to locate a pedophile and a harasser, and this criminal was identified. When I was told this criminal was not located and arrested, but he was identified. But at least this pedophile was identified. What can we do? We ask the provider of this malware to deactivate. We do so when we are in the interiors, inside places. So this has to be discussed before putting this norm in vigor. GPR's devices, the legislator is talking and thinking about physical GPRs in the cars. Now, what happens with the mobile phone? GPRs can be make as a Trojan virus and triangulize the signaling. It doesn't seem to be contemplated, but it's not seem to be prohibited. It allows us to locate the criminal suspicious and suspected to have committed a crime. At the very same time, this allows us a possibility which is not within the area of GPRs, but in the information massive storage, hard disks of 5 gigs. Uploaded by a crane onto a plane. For us to wiretype and intervene a hard disk, we use the laws of drawers and archives. At least Windows created a folder for creating a more clear metaphor. Oh, what should we have done if they had put the Aladdin bulb? The mouse does not eat cheese. This is metaphor. So metaphors are very risky, are full and loaded with the devil. Drawers and archives. Now we're talking about information massive repositories situated remotely. We get into the computer tower with 3 hard disks, dismantle, put in the bag, and to the analysis level. What happens with another situations? If this person has a youth harasser asking for pornography, kept and recorded information in the remote. So the police agents inspected in situ, on the spot, with the legal judge authorization, the computer assisted by his attorney. In the brain, it was not needed, and the criminal conformed to a specific minor sentence, but the Criminal Procedure Act allows to intervene to wiretap remote storage systems, link and liaise with the cricket person. Here we go. The law talk about a motivated ruling with some requirements about the necessity, the copies, to avoid the fraudulent alteration of the data. In the very same time, should the massive information storage be captured, for instance, in the street, the police can know somebody is committing a crime from his tablet sitting at a bar, and the police does not need a legal authorization, and they caught him. Legal authorization to access the massive information device in the pocket. He has a mobile phone with a disco flash of 180 gigs. That is to say, 128,000 megas. So people now is loading with thousands of information in their pockets with technology flash, where the forensic recovery of data is very difficult and volatile compared to the magnetic hard disk. So the legal authorization has to be sparkling and dashing immediately to avoid remote deletion for these devices. Apple devices come with the possibility of delete information in remote, but you can do so because you are in the police station, but your accomplice can do so on your hand. Or some can programming changing this device, and the criminal can say to the judge, "My device is not configured the same way. Somebody modified the data in my cell phone at the police station. The software has been modified." They can allege this. So the device is inside, period. It's also foreseen that these data are studied and analyzed in case of emergency to locate a person who is in severe risk, somebody who is about to commit suicide. We knew through communication on social networks this person is going to commit suicide, but his mother authorized the police to access his hard disks. No legal authorization now is needed for this. The Erchancha, the Bax police, they knew that they got GPRs and they couldn't intervene or wiretap their GPRs because we had to check the NATO because it's a military satellite. So let's move on to the remote registers, the power of the cloud. The article talks about software specially designed to obtain evidence from a remote equipment. And there's another important issue, or to identify codes or identifications online. We'll talk about later. Troyans have a problem. In accordance with the law, in principle, it's evidence if you go to court, and when the trial is public and all the evidence have to be practiced and done in front of the judge with the legal immediacy principle. The lawyer can go there. The evidence against my defendant had been illegally obtained. I want to make sure that the police officers didn't manipulate the device. So I want a contradictory evidence checking into the source code of my defendant. Since the very beginning, the source code is done by the defense. It can do an inverse engineering, and this source cannot be used again because the vulnerability to access the operating system is going to be patched. There is a possible solution. I read the judge's blog, and the laundering money law contemplated the intelligence reports which are not shown to the defense because there are many infiltrated agents. So there are some evidence with whom some official certification they are not shown to the defense. There is a public institution in TECO or the CNCERT, a public institution alien to this legal investigation, have to justify and check that the software has not been manipulated, because we cannot send the source code to the defense because in this case we can only use it once. Local devices. As of today, the possibility of recorded data on remote devices on the cloud is very possible. It's very feasible. As I said to Roman on that super famous radio show, don't let your state be obfuscated by this technological horror. The possibility of register a local device is nothing comparable to the power of the cloud. As we get into these depths, the criminal procedure law seems more to be something like science fiction compared to the ancient history. We're talking about science fiction. Really, my friends. Leonard Nimoy passed away some days ago. I cannot let you go except for long live and prosperity, my friends.
Vamos bien de tiempo. Perdonad, vamos bien de tiempo con lo que podemos hacer.
We are okay with time. First question, myself. I can put you in a bind, and please tell me if you are able to answer or not. Statements such as, okay, David Idiot, Cameron, imbecile, who said the deciphering codes should be available to the police officers. A political person from a nation said that. I will refrain from commenting on this because England, Britain is a foreign country. I didn't comment on that. When we talk about free collaboration among the telecom companies and the professionals knowing the IT system, there is a special mention to the thing that the indicted is away from this obligation. The indicted person cannot be forced to deliver his keyword, his password, the keywords. We cannot force the hacker into giving us his password, because the Constitution says that every person has the right to not to declare against himself and not to incriminate himself. So if the indicted person delivers us a keyword or the password which proves his guilt, he himself would be declaring himself, I'm guilty. So in principle, we talk about a password which does not depend only with a security company, but for a user who said this keyword, this password is not available according to the Spanish law for him to be forced to send and to deliver his password. I am... my microphone doesn't work properly. This law aims at fighting against pedophiles, not the junkies. This is naive. All tyrants use terrorists and pedophiles to infringe citizens' rights. It's good that this law is against pedophiles, but what happens if this law is used against ourselves, computing community? Let's break down your question. The communications have risky. Sometimes you defend or stand up for something which is undefendable with valid arguments. Jack Nicholson in the movie Good Man. We are living in a world with walls, and these walls have to be defended by armed and weaponized. Who is going to do so? The law or ourselves? I may be the state for you, but you are, but you want me on that wall. You want me on that wall. Oh, Jack Nicholson, such a good actor. He nailed it. And he sells you the good thing because he's telling something which is true. There are frontier soldiers who have to be ready for action. And this argument is used to not for the fact that two Marines have hit an undefensive boy. This is not defendable. I'm not saying that this law is intended for only the pederasts or pedophiles. It's intended for all kind of criminals, for sabotage computing criminals, for all domestic computing issues. Somebody intervening in the database of a company and the administrator whose keyword has been hijacked and hacked. What can I do? Ma'am, moving forward, and let's report it to the police. With the actions we had back at the time, we couldn't investigate. This is intended for jihadists, pederasts, for those terrorist recruiters. There is not a label. We cannot say this law is the administrative in case it's everything. Depending on the interpretation of the human factor, in the very end, you're used to dealing with machines, and machines always respond to all situations the same way. We have a code which is not executed on machines. We execute the code on human beings. So human factor is more feasible and positive. In the very end, depends on the judicial operators to bear in mind the severe crimes of organized criminality to contain and to impede this from happening. I wrote on Security Report an article about certain articles in the criminal procedure law should not be used. And a professor from the University of Zaragoza. Oh, but some people in the laboratory can read it. We are going to reproduce the system of Google's company. How are you going to reproduce the Google systems as a data bank of evidence? This is impossible. So companies are awarded a prize. If you discover a vulnerability, you'll be given a prize. Or some update one vulnerability, they are applauded into doing so. And this is it. In the very end, the IT foreign companies applaud this, are in favor of this. More vulnerabilities, I'm happy. So I should. There are certain crimes which are only investigated on somebody's action to avoid to put this case away. We're sorry, the interpreters, we are sorry because in the English we cannot hear the speaker on stage properly. We're sorry for this inconvenience. We interpreters are having really trouble understanding and hearing what the speaker is saying on stage because the sound does not reach us properly. We're sorry. Good morning. Congratulations on your very interesting talk. So I have a question for you. When you said to us that the IT and telecom operatives companies have the obligation of communicate, when they do so, I know as a fact for certain that they don't know the subscribers management system, the operators every 15 days have to dump all the data from their customers regarding a layout urban from and this the old CMT to the new one. You have to do so every 15 days. Should you not do it? You have an incremental fine. So I'm surprised that you say that there is no fault against this operator. I'm surprised that the Criminal Procedure Act comes out now when since 2007 and from last year as well, even though it was not in vigor until October this year, the very same system of managing things, there is the obligation of generation of a type of file which is of illegal interception regarding the systems updates. I'm surprised that you say that there is no fines or punishment against the operators. Mea culpa, I slash myself. I went so quickly over this issue that I skipped fundamental details. I'm talking about criminal law. You're talking about administrative fines. It's true that the administrative fines contemplate sanctions against the operators who fail to obey the law. I reclaim a penal punishment against an operator. You can say the fucking guy who signed the thing in the operator. And you can go against the person itself, but I'm in favor of widening the penal responsibility of companies within the crime of disobedience. If somebody, if the company fails to comply with the law, the company itself can be persecuted by law. This lack of penal sanction makes companies be more frightful and afraid of the data protection agency than the judges in themselves. I saw companies saying to us, I'm not going to give you the data, judge, because you are not going to put me a fine of 50,000 euros, and the data protection agency will do. So these companies are afraid of the data protection agencies, not the judges. Legal law is the most severe sanction and punishment against the citizens. We are the only public administration who can put you into jail. The traffic protection directorship can put you a fine for driving under influence, but the data protection agency cannot put you in jail. A criminal court can put you in jail. So people are more afraid of administrative sanctions rather than criminal punishments. We have start the thing about the new law from the roof. It's a sectorial law. The European Union Tribunal gave us a ruling regarding an appeal from the Czech Republic. This law obliged to modify the criminal law is to force the IT operators to give their data to the judges. So we needed a criminal procedure act for the operators to put it in the availability of the judges, but the norm to access the communication did not contemplate this. So we have, it's like the national scheme of security. We have for critical infrastructure, which is cool. But if you infringe these critical infrastructure protection system, what is the crime? What is the punishment? What is? So in peaceful times, and this action is against the law, is a crime. So we're cricket. So we needed to change the 197 article to contemplate the IT invasions and attacks. We got all the critical infrastructure topic, but we let an open door, or we left an open door for the bird to go in. So this new procedure law crosses the scheme and circle the whole thing.
Hola. Te quería preguntar sobre.
I would like to ask you what judicial guarantees or warrants do you have for Telnet system not be used without the permission of the judges? Secondly, in what circumstances are you allowed to cooperate between states to persecute a cyber attack? Intel, you are talking about operating in terminal mode? The evidence before the judge, you have to explain to the judge how do you get it. I referred to there exists evidence this system can be used without a judge knowing it, of course, but I insist when you have evidence and you present them to the judge, you need to give the reasons of the origin of this evidence. A judge can be deceived. You can obtain data without legal authorization and to sneak them through to them. For instance, let's think about a particular civil servant. Doing so would be committing a crime. Without judicial warrants, guarantees are not the security 100% that something is going to be done. You need a criminal response. The 138 article from the Criminal Code says that if you kill somebody, you'd be punished as with 50 days, but it does not prohibit yourself committing this crime. For instance, a civil servant with bad intention or with excess jealousy can hide data from the judge. If he's caught, he will be committing a crime. Regarding international cooperation, in principle, about crimes, there are treaties about how to cooperate. Eurojust, a vacant was published some days ago for a Spanish prosecutor in The Hague. As a Spanish liaison with Eurojust for transnational crime. So there are ways of cooperation. For instance, a country spying on another country is logical that they are not going to cooperate. How to persecute particular criminals when the agent is from another country, agency? There are mechanisms to cooperate, there are some failures regarding the legislation harmonization. For instance, in the United States, the big IT companies are using software detecting the implementation of children's pornography, and this is giving us a lot of success. It allows to detect pornography files attached to an Outlook email or sent over the Facebook messaging system. The hash is analyzed in the file compared with the hash database. If there is a positive, they inform the National Center for Exploitation of Children. And this organization, MECMEC, if the crime is committed on a United States IP, is reported to the FBI. For instance, if it's from Spain, where there is no direct information transmission, is done through diplomacy envoy with the security agent in the U.S. Embassy, and the Spanish authorities are told about this to act. Regarding the illicit files in private communications, it's not contemplated. It's licit, it's legal to do so in the States. It should be licit also in Spain, because U.S. got the evidence. If it is valid in the origin country, it's valid in the destination country. I'm afraid of it, and I'm getting more and more reports about this. The guys exchanging this trash of pornography files. They know that in Europe, Europe is tracking down the pornographers, and they're using private networks such as email, Twitter, Facebook, because they think they can get pornography through these sites. So there are some rulings in the Supreme Court about this. There's international cooperation, but the problem is the international cooperation mechanisms. We need to harmonize the criminal law and regulations, and for this purpose, of course. Any more questions, please?
Hello, can I ask in English? Here.
Ah, sí, perdón.
Can I ask in English? Okay. We have seen lately coordinated efforts to take down, for example, hidden services in Tor, like Silk Road 2 and things like that. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think if the institution of an international court about computer crimes could be a good idea?
¿Me vas a permitir que te responda en castellano? Creo que te he entendido.
I'm going to ask you. Okay. My English is quite rusty, so please let me ask you back to you in Spanish.
Los mecanismos de cooperación que existen.
The existing cooperation mechanisms are about transferring information from the authorities from one country to the other about the evidence, the detention of suspicious people, suspects, and the extradition. But there is not one single international tribunal to judge these crimes. We're talking about a European prosecutor's office to operate on the whole European Union territory. One of the problems we have gone through in Spain, that the fragmentation of Spain's territory into small circumscriptions, plots, areas where Spanish judges operate, create competitive issues. So, for example, for terrorists and criminal organization crimes, there is one single court all over Spain who has jurisdiction for all the Spain's country. A similar initiative for Europe as a country itself would be great. I would take it with pleasure. I would like to make a comment and then a question. I would like to ask a question. It came to my mind when you talk about how to put into circulation children's and youth pictures. Ethically speaking, who is the one in charge to say? Who is the one who says, okay, this photo, this picture of this minor, I'm going to put it into circulation? I don't know too much about laws. When a judge authorizes the police to enter somebody's house, they catch in, open the door. The landlord gives me the keys. They don't penetrate the wall, but they leave a hole on the wall. When you install a Trojan on somebody's mobile phone, it's going to decrease the safety and the security of this person. This case is going to happen. What you said makes this possibility useful. Not just if you have to make a break to my iPhone to install, for instance, a Trojan. When you verify, okay, you didn't do anything wrong, but you let me with a Trojan, and the level of security on my mobile phone was decreased. I will start by the comment. It's not about putting into circulation. By circulation, you mean to put it on a network for somebody to download it. This is a barbarity. They're talking about it would be allowed for the people to transmit illicit files, to put it into context, and to say in that case, it's for children's pornography. It's a very, very specific case, but we're talking about, fundamentally speaking, about using a file to send it to a forum where there are suspicious pedophiles suspected to be there, and they are going to be arrested. As the drug hushes, the police are not distributing drug. The idea is to capture the drug, because the receivers of this drug are going to discover themselves, and the drug will be destroyed later. It will be a vigilated, a watch delivery. Regarding minors' files, the police are not going to analyze the pictures. Obviously, the idea would be, firstly, to capture materials from previous operations, minors who had been used and abused, at least that their suffering would allow us to prevent crimes from another minors. We should look for less dangerous alternatives. For instance, alternatives such as using Photoshop with made-up youth people. There's some kind of pre-visualization for the suspect to say, okay, this file is valid, and we can transform these archives, these files, looking for the less dangerous and less safe alternative. Let's see how can we work out the whole thing, and how can we reduce any diminution of the youthful people security. Regarding the hole on the wall, this metaphor you have used, the good thing would be, okay, I'm knocking on your door. There is a judge ruling say that we're going to inspect your house. It would be the normal thing for you. The most striking hypothesis would be terrorists on the floor, on the flat, the manager of the office, and the special forces on the door, ready to act. If we had to penetrate through a hole on the wall, that's it. Especially to catch them. Let's translate it to the computing community thing. Let's not use any kind of tools. Let's use only weapons whose effects are reversible. When the administration decides that we should, there should be the hypothesis, the theoretical thing, the idealistic thing would be to obtain this information with reversible, non-lesive, non-undamaged effects. Only for these cases where there is indices or indicia that allow us to minimize the possibility of committing mistakes. So you can say, okay, you have leave my mobile phone unprotected. Okay, but this criminal person is going to say, okay, yes, but it's a tool you are using to commit a crime. This belongs to the state. If you are innocent and you have done anything wrong from an administrative viewpoint, when the administration, we're sorry, but the interpreters cannot hear what the speaker says because there is a lot of background noise. We're sorry for this inconvenience. We're sorry for this. The judge says that okay, this does not depend on me, depend on the administrative authority. A very last question with a comment. The Samsung Nokia cell phones, when they are rebooted, they burn a condensator, and you cannot see the change. You have a problematic road over there. I have no idea. Very last question over there. I will try to speed it up. Two very short questions for the speakers. When I started reading, can you shake your hand, please? When I started reading about the modification of the law, it seems that the software devoted to computer security was included as a crime. The modification and the utilization of consoles. That has this been modified? Because I get the feeling that if I would be with this law, I would spend 6 years in prison. Last year, in your talk, you talk about how can we hack the law? How can we hack the law in a malign or malicious way? Because with the new definition of terrorism, something forcing the public powers to perform an act is not considered a terrorist act, even though you don't pertain to a criminal organization. And computing crimes aimed at that purpose can be considered as a crime. As you said last year, by accessing terrorist content pages or websites is terrorism, so we can close down security websites because they are giving us information as to how to attacking certain things that can be used for other purpose, and for all the visitors of this website are penalized because visiting the website habitually is a crime. I'm very scared of it. I'm really freaking afraid of what is going on here. Oh, page not found, error 404. I'm talking about the reform of the criminal procedure. But you said what you said is that the reform of the criminal law is different things. I have to study it profoundly because this early April I have to give a paper about the reform of the criminal code. That's why I'm joking about the page not found. Last year when I said hacking a law, I talk about the hackers of the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We need to improve the law as to making the law able to serve an ends for which it was not thought about. With this law, you aren't going to put on a car when this car got all the facilities, dashboards. I wanted that the law coming from the 19th century should be useful to mirror what this needs. Now I don't need to hack anything because my new law is totally updated, because I'm seeing totally unforeseeable consequences not foreseen by the legislator. But I'm not talking about tricking about the law, which is you kindly suggested. I'm worried about the definition of terrorism as such done in the criminal or penal code. I think this is going to be reformed. I don't want to get into this garden of conflicts, but when they say obliging the state into doing such a specific action, they're talking about the Miguel Angel Miguel Angel Blanco terrorist victim case forced the state into changing the penitentiary policy by threatening the state to doing so. This situation created a climate of opinion which forces the state to take back a law. A demonstration cannot be that. In this regard, judges have proved many times that when the legislator creates a norm which is considerably punitive, they're interpreted in a regard that that reform has not had this effect. In my opinion, they exceeded this thing. The Article 189.3a said there was an aggravation for the children's pornography about abusing under 13 years old children, or for people using email to download pornography. 7-8 years of sentence for somebody who downloaded 10 files, but never they put on their fingers on a minor. There were more proportioned sentence for this crime, 1 to 4 years of prison. Now the minimum is 5, the maximum 9. Minimum 5, maximum 9. The criminal code said using minors to elaborate the material. We're talking about people facilitating the widespread use. So this aggravating condition cannot be used for people facilitating their diffusion. So this aggravation stopped being used for people exchanging archives over email. Back at that time, I was very pissed on this. Because it was in 2009, because they created like judo action against the code. But my understanding is that the Supreme Court can be a negative legislator by interpreting the law in such a way that they constrain the law in a more reasonable limits. Because by forcing in violence the state, they do imply violence, not creating a climate against the state. Some political, juridical activists exceeded in using this comparison. I'm talking about a friend of mine who exceeded on this. When they talk about the websites for vulnerate fundamentals of computer security, the reasonings from judges, they don't use these soft differences. The rulings imply using stronger affirmations. It's being typified back in time, the possession of programs for computing frauds. If you have on your hard disks at home an issue from Zeus, banking Trojan, you'd be in principle in possession of an illicit file. I don't know any single case in the Spain's jurisdiction over the last 15 years somebody sentenced by having this Zeus archive. Should it be found with the current tools? It's useful for this and for something else. Not only it serves to the purpose of banking fraud, but also to collect information, to watch out on children when they are not their parents in front of them. Or another example, something typified in the criminal code as commercialization of devices eliminating computing protections. For instance, motifs from Nintendo consoles. There's a lot of legislation about this. There are so many sentences saying motifs serves to hack video games, but also Linux on Nintendo. So it's not the right device only to commit the specific crimes against the intellectual property, because they have another non-offensive uses. So the legislator, by being pressed by intellectual property law, is creating this article from the, okay, I have malicious people in the shot who are guilty of killing an important bullfighter, and many judges said, okay, this is not a crime, this is not exclusively usable for committing a crime against intellectual property, it's used for other things, and it cannot be used then. So, okay, crime of having weapons of safety, security is discussable. So please, I'll check out on this, and when the reform is being studied by myself, until later, next talk, I will give you a founded legal response to use. So, error 404. Thank you, Jorge, very much for your nice presentation.